Hey everybody, it's Rosie from Love You Be Good. I am here to chat with you today about how to find the right veterinarian. We're going to start out by talking about the different types of veterinarians. Now, on one hand, you have general practitioners. They are very similar to the primary care physicians in the human world. And then on the other hand, you have your specialty vets, and they're pretty much, about the same when it comes to the human world. There are oncologists, there are neurologists, there are dermatologists, there's physical therapists. There's just a whole slew of specialty areas to also help with your pet's health if they do end up having issues beyond kind of your general practice, tummy aches and maybe, cuts on their feet or something like that. So those are the two types of kind of categories of vets, like I mentioned, general practitioner and then your specialty vets. When it comes to finding the best vet for you, in my opinion, there are two really great ways to find yourself the best veterinarian for you. However, they're not the only two ways that you can go about finding a vet, but they are the two ways that I think are the best way to do it. Number one is going to be referrals. So the number one best thing I think you can do is ask people, ask family, ask friends, ask, people at the dog park, your groomer, your pet sitter, your dog walker. I mean, anybody that's part of your pet care team, anybody that helps you with your pets and or has pets of their own. I think word of mouth is by far still the best way for you to find the best of the best when it comes to your pet care. So I would definitely start with referrals. And the second way that I would recommend, and I think is the best way to find a good vet, is by perusing their online reviews. People get you know how it goes. People get brutally honest online, and that includes reviews as well. And so, going to a bunch of different platforms to look at reviews for the veterinarians that you might be looking to go to is another really, really great way. Now, there are other ways, like I mentioned, to try and narrow down the list, but the other ways are a little bit more time consuming. For instance, you can call different veterinarians and talk to the staff and ask them questions like, are you taking new patients? What do you do in cases of emergency? How long are your average wait times and things like that. But it does take a little bit of time on your part, and it takes a little bit of time for them as well. And so, finding kind of that perfect harmony of when you have the time and they have the time to kind of have a 20-30 minute conversation with you about, their services and what they do and their philosophy on things might be a little bit tougher. So that's why I kind of go with the more, I recommend the more referral and online review strategy, just because those are ways that you can manage the information a little bit better. Now, so we've talked about the different types of vets. We've talked about the best way to find a good vet. And now I'm going to actually jump into, Rosie, how do I know if my vet is a good vet? Maybe you're somebody watching this that has a veterinarian and you like them, but you're not in love with them, or there's just something that feels a little off. And so you're wondering, what are the good signs of a vet and what are the bad signs? So I'm going to actually start with the good signs. The signs of a good vet it starts actually with the staff. So the minute you walk in the door, I myself am a very analytical person, and I am very, very observant. I love people watching. You learn so much about the world by just watching people go about their business. And so one of the things that I would recommend is that when you do eventually choose a veterinarian to go to and you make that first appointment, as soon as you walk in the door, start looking around, start paying attention to the body language and the tone of voice and how the staff, the front office staff actually, the energy that they're putting out and the energy that they have. Are they happy? Do they seem happy? Do they seem relaxed? Do they seem overly stressed out? Is there a lot of whispering? Is there, anyone that's worked in an office, you know what the vibe is like, when people are happy at work and you kind of can understand also like what the vibe is like when people are not happy at work. So I would say to apply those same principles to the staff in the front office. You know, some signs, you know, that it's a good vet is, you know, everyone is there's a fluidity to the process, right? From the minute you walk in and you check in to the minute you check out, there's a fluidity. There's not a lot of back and forth. There's not a lot of wait time. There's not a lot of you know, the veterinarian coming in and out from the front office to the back office and vice versa, or the staff isn't going back and forth either. So there's kind of a flow and a harmony to the way that the overall operation runs, right? So that's number one. That's a good sign. The second sign that I would look for, that I consider to be a good sign, would be is when you actually go in and get your diagnosis for whatever ailment it is that your animal is suffering with or is struggling with. So let's say you go in and it's kidney disease, right? Let's say it's your cat. Like, let's say you go in and they, you know, your cat has been showing signs of not feeling well, and so you take them in and it's early stage kidney disease. You know, a good veterinarian is going to actually tell you what kidney disease is, the stages of kidney disease, and the next steps. And they're going to actually give you options of, like, you know, option A, we can do this. Option B, you know, this is another avenue we can take, and option C is another thing we can take, another, you know, path we can take with this diagnosis. And they're also going to send you home with information on how to do at-home care, things you can actually do and you know, should be doing in order to help maintain and to help your cat have the best quality of life with this new disease that they were just diagnosed with. The third thing that I would say is a sign of a good veterinarian is consistency and conversation. So this one can be a little tricky, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. So what I mean by consistency and conversation, I mean that when you go for your first visit, obviously they take down all of your animal's information. They have a chart started on them, so they have, you know, as much information as they possibly can have after your first visit. But when you come in for the second visit, your veterinarian and or their vet tech team actually ask you questions about whatever you were there for the visit before. So there's consistency from one visit to the next. The conversation always piggybacks off of whatever it is that your animal has gone through since they started going there. So and what I mean by this is, let's say, for example, your dog has an allergy, has some type of environmental allergy. So let's say they're, you know, super allergic to grass. Okay, that is a thing. So let's say your dog's allergic to grass. Let's just say you call the vet office and you say, I need to bring him in because his paws are just, he's chewing on them, they're raw, like I don't know what's going on, or I don't know what else to do. And so you take your dog in and you go and you see a veterinarian, and the veterinarian asks you, well, are they allergic to grass? Well, if you've already been there and you've already had this conversation with your veterinarian, they shouldn't ask you if they're allergic to grass if you've already had this conversation with them. Because at the very least, like, look, I don't expect veterinarians to remember every little detail about every animal they see, because they see a lot of them, and I totally understand that. But that's what the chart is for. So that either means that they have a really great memory and they do remember, or they actually looked at your chart when they knew that they had an appointment with you. Either way, that shows initiative, and that shows understanding, and that shows consistency in your care. That's what I consider to be the third most important way to differentiate a good vet from a bad vet. All right, so what do we have as our good signs? So our good signs are staff is in good spirits. The process from start to finish is smooth. There's fluidity. So that's the first sign. The second sign is going to be options on diagnosis. So your animal leaves better than the way that they went in to see your veterinarian, and or they're going to be sent home with a plan, and there's going to be a strategy behind their care. The third good sign is going to be consistency in conversation. So it's going to be a veterinarian that is going to remember, what your animal has been through, where they are in their health journey, and it's going to stay consistent. On the other side of that, there's obviously some bad signs, right? So, It's really the opposite of everything I just said. So number one bad sign would be a disgruntled office staff. Whew, I've seen those in my day. So if the staff is not happy, you're probably not going to be all that happy either. So I would just have your appointment, and yes, you can switch vets however many times you want to. So I would just have my first appointment and just find a new one if you do walk in and find a disgruntled staff. The second one is going to be when you see a veterinarian and there's no options on diagnosis. So again, back to the cat example. If you walk in with your cat, they do blood work, and they come back and say, oh yeah, your cat has kidney disease, and then send you home, that's not a good sign. That's a bad sign. That's a really bad sign. So I would immediately start looking for another vet. Like I wouldn't even go back. And the third one that we talked about was if there's no consistency in conversation. So if you do go to a veterinarian and that veterinarian can't remember or doesn't remember that your dog is allergic to penicillin or any number of things, or latex or whatever. So those are obvious, really dangerous things for them to forget, but that lack of consistency in their care is also going to end up harming them in the long run, because if they have to have surgery or if there's anything major that they have to get done and your veterinarian doesn't remember your history, your animal's history, then that's potentially could create a really, really serious problem. And there's one more thing actually that goes in line with that consistency issue. And I would say if you go to a veterinarian practice and every time you go, you get a different vet. Oh my gosh, this is one of my biggest pet peeves, because that does not allow for consistency of care. So I actually have a friend who was going to a veterinarian, and every time he took his dog, he had a new veterinarian, even though he would request the same one. And it ends up costing way more money than it should, because every visit is basically like a new visit. Even if you do have, let's say 3 or 4 vets at that practice and they rotate, right? There's still the inconsistency that they don't know what the vet before them did. They don't know what's been done other than what's been written in the chart, and the charts aren't always up to date. So that's another thing too, is sometimes the consistency or the lack of consistency isn't necessarily, the veterinarian themselves, but it could be the note taking. It could be, the records that they keep. Ultimately, the number one thing that I would say that, to really, really look out for is that whole operations management, right? And it starts with the staff, and then it goes into the options of diagnosis, and then it goes into the consistency in your in your medical conversations with your veterinarian for your animals. So, and do you see a trend here? A lot of these things can actually be transferred into the human world. So if you take everything that I just mentioned and you apply it to the human medical field, it's exactly the same thing. So just keep that in mind. So when it comes to the medical care for your animals, first and foremost, like, you're paying for all of it, if not, most of it if you have insurance. But at the end of the day, you're paying for all of that. And a lot of these things that I'm mentioning to you that are good signs, these are things that actually save you money in the long run. So I would highly, highly recommend that you, take the time to, get your referrals, read your online reviews, to, then, be analytical, be observant. And when you go into that vet, check off these boxes. What did we cover today? So we covered the different types of vets, the best ways to find a vet, referrals, and the good signs of a vet. So hopefully this was super helpful. In the next one, I'm going to deep dive into your pet care team, who they are, how you can find them as well, which is all, like I said, referrals, and what they can help you with outside of possibly just the primary thing that they do, or maybe the primary thing that you hired them for. So we'll talk about that next time. For now, have a wonderful weekend, wonderful week, and I will see you next Saturday. Come here, come say hi to the nice people. Oh, it is Mickey. Oh, say hi. Oh, there he goes. Drew, say hi. Who's that? He's like, I don't look at the phone. I hate the phone. I don't look at the phone.